The fallout continued today from a secret recording of then candidate Donald Trump discussing hush money for a former Playboy model. Yamiche Alcindor begins our coverage.
Well, thank you very much.
The big topic at the White House today was supposed to be trade. But when President Trump and European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker ended the public portion of the meeting, they were sprayed with questions about something entirely different.
Did Michael Cohen betray you?
Thank you very much.
This new talk about the president's former lawyer, Michael Cohen, comes as a new recording has been made public. A September 2016 conversation between Cohen and then-candidate Donald Trump. CNN, the first news outlet to obtain the tape, reported that it got the recording from Cohen's legal team. In the recording, which Cohen's legal team declined to provide to the NewsHour, Cohen seems to be discussing a possible way to send payments to David Pecker, chairman of American Media Incorporated, which owns the National Enquirer tabloid.
I need to open up a company for the transfer of all of that info regarding our friend David, so that I'm going to do that right away. When it comes time for the financing, which will be...
Listen, what financing?
We'll have to pay you. So
Don't pay for cash.
No. No.
Days before the 2016 election, the Wall Street Journal reported that American media agreed to pay $150,000 to former Playboy model Karen McDougal for her story alleging that she had an affair with Mr. Trump a decade ago, a story that American media never ran. In the report, the company disputed the characterization of the payment, and then spokeswoman Hope Hicks responded on behalf of the Trump campaign. We have no knowledge of any of this. Today, the dispute between lawyers for the two men was over what was actually said in the recording about how the payment to Pecker could be made. Lanny Davis, an attorney for Cohen, told ABC this.
The word is cash. Everybody should listen to the tape and see whether I'm right or not.
While Rudy Giuliani, a personal attorney for Mr. Trump, wrote, "Why are Cohen and Lanny Davis misrepresenting the language from President Trump? Do not pay by cash. Check." The apparent break between President Trump and his longtime associate comes despite Cohen's past statements of loyalty. He told Vanity Fair magazine for an article last year, "I'm the guy who would take a bullet for the president." But since then, it has become public that federal authorities in New York are investigating Cohen, and Davis, Cohen's current lawyer, told ABC Cohen's priorities had changed.
He's now dedicated to telling the truth to everyone, and we'll see what happens.
As for the why behind Cohen's apparent break from Mr. Trump, today Davis denied that Cohen was still seeking a pardon from the president. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Yamiche Alcindor.
A note, the CNN reporter whom we just heard ask the president if attorney Michael Cohen betrayed him was a little later barred by the White House from attending an open press event in the Rose Garden. Caitlin Collins was told by the Deputy White House Chief of Staff and the press secretary that her questions were, quote, inappropriate. We take a closer look now at what we know about the president's former lawyer and his legal troubles with attorney Renato Mariotti. He's a former federal prosecutor. He currently works in private practice in Chicago. Renato Mariotti, thank you for joining us. What do you hear in that recording that's significant?
Well, one thing that I hear, Judy, is discussion that makes it clear that the president is familiar with this transaction, that he knows the circumstances of it. He does not seem surprised by the subject at all. That would make it very difficult for the president or his legal team to say later that the president had no knowledge of this matter. It also, the fact that he talks in the plural suggests that this isn't the first time that he's dealt with a situation like this. If I had asked you, if I demanded payment from you for information, I'm sure you'd have a lot of questions about it. You'd want to know how you could be sure that the story wouldn't get published, and you'd have a lot of questions about the details. There's really not a lot of questions here. This seems almost like a standard transaction. The president suggests a number, 150 very quickly. And then there's obviously this whole, as you played a moment ago, this whole discussion of cash. And regardless of how you read the conversation, whether you accept Mr. Giuliani's version or the version that Mr. Cohen's lawyer put forward, the fact that a lawyer was discussing whether or not to pay in cash for a large financial transaction is very unusual.
So what does this mean in terms of legal jeopardy, either for Michael Cohen, who we believe to be under investigation, or for President Trump? Do you hear anything that crosses the line?
Well, certainly this is a problem for in terms of campaign finance violations. What's been reported is that Mr. Cohen is under investigation for both campaign finance violations and for fraud. And as to the campaign finance violations, there's discussion on this tape of another sort of related matter that the president suggests could be pushed off till after the election. There's an issue of timing there, and I think that's important because what the legal issue is regarding campaign finance is whether or not these payments to women would be considered an expense that is related to the campaign. Typically, the president would have, I think, a very strong defense that anyone would want to hide their personal affairs from the public or from others, and to protect their spouse and their family, regardless of whether they're in the middle of a campaign. The fact, though, that during the same conversation, the president is talking about timing and it appears to be related to pushing something off after the election suggests that the purpose of this conversation and of the payment was related to the election. And I think that in particular would be problematic. And like I said earlier, the mere fact that the president knows about the payment and knows the specifics also could potentially create problems for him when combined with other evidence.
Now we know that that this recording they waived the right of privilege here, and making it public. I think I don't, and many others who don't know the law want to understand why would that be? Why would they waive the privilege of the president, the client speaking to his lawyer?
Well, Judy, you and the viewers at home aren't the only ones who want to know that. Many lawyers have asked me that question over the last week or over the last 24 hours, because typically lawyers are very reluctant to waive privilege. Not only is it because you can't take that waiver back once you've waived it, but sometimes waiving privilege over one recording or one document opens up the privilege as to other documents or recordings, because courts don't want you to use privilege as a way of unmasking only certain things, to waive privilege over the documents or the recordings that are helpful to you and maintain privileges to others. So often that could mean that privilege is waived as to a number of documents or a number of recordings. So typically attorneys are very reluctant to waive privilege. There's really no legal strategy that can explain why they've waived privilege here. It must be a PR or press strategy or something unrelated to the legal strategy.
Just very quickly, Renato Mariotti, what questions do you have after this that are not answered?
The questions I have relate to the fraud charges that are supposedly under investigation by federal prosecutors. We still don't know what they're looking at or what those charges are centered around.
Well, this and a number of other things are raising questions we're all seeking answers to. Renato Mariotti, thank you very much.
Thank you, Judy.